Stop what you are doing right now, because if you are over 60 and you have not heard what leading cancer researchers are now saying about your daily diet, you are missing something that could genuinely be the difference between catching a problem early and never having one at all. There is something happening inside the body of almost every American over the age of 60, something that most people cannot feel, cannot see, and would never guess is quietly increasing their cancer risk every single day. And the most frightening part is that it is happening at the dinner table, in the refrigerator, in the grocery cart, in the choices that seem completely harmless because nobody ever told you otherwise. The top oncologists and immunologists in this country are now pointing to one of the clearest and most consistent findings in modern cancer research. And that finding is this: what you eat after 60 either feeds your immune system or quietly starves it. And your immune system is the only thing standing between you and the abnormal cell growth that eventually becomes cancer. So if you are over 60, and especially if cancer has touched your family in any way, I need you to stay with me through this entire video. Because what you are about to hear is going to change the way you think about your plate, your pantry, and your protection. Let us start with something that most people do not fully appreciate, and that is just how dramatically the immune system changes after the age of 60. Researchers call this process immunosenescence, and it is one of the most important and least discussed aspects of aging in America today. Immunosenescence is essentially the gradual decline in immune function that comes with age, and it affects nearly every component of your body's defense system. Your T cells, which are the immune cells responsible for identifying and destroying abnormal or cancerous cells, become less numerous and less responsive. Your natural killer cells, which function like the special forces of your immune system and are specifically designed to hunt down and eliminate cancer cells before they can multiply, become slower and less aggressive. Your body's ability to produce new immune cells decreases, and the communication between different parts of the immune system becomes less efficient. At the same time, a process called inflammaging begins to accelerate, which is a state of chronic, low-grade inflammation that persists in the body without any obvious cause and without the dramatic symptoms you would normally associate with inflammation, like swelling or pain. This chronic inflammation is not just uncomfortable or inconvenient. It is actively creating an internal environment where cancer cells can develop, survive, and grow more easily. And it is one of the primary reasons why cancer incidence rises so sharply after the age of 60. Here is the question that nobody asks loudly enough, and it is the question at the heart of everything in this video. If your immune system is the most powerful cancer prevention tool your body has, and if that immune system is directly influenced by what you eat, then why are most conversations about cancer prevention focused entirely on screenings and genetics, and almost nothing on the food that either strengthens or weakens your defenses every single day? The answer is complicated, but the science is not. Decades of research, published through the National Institutes of Health, the American Cancer Society, and institutions like the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, have established beyond any serious scientific doubt that certain foods have powerful, measurable, clinically significant effects on immune function, inflammation levels, and cancer risk. And the 5 foods at the center of this video are not exotic, not expensive, and not difficult to find. They are foods that most Americans have access to right now, today, and that most people over 60 are either not eating enough of or are not eating in the right way to get the full protective benefit. Before we get to those 5 foods, I want you to understand the biological framework that makes them so important, because if you understand the why, you will never need to be reminded to eat them. Your immune system, like every other system in your body, is made of cells, And those cells need raw materials to function properly. They need specific vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytochemicals to do their jobs efficiently. When those raw materials are missing or insufficient, your immune cells become like soldiers without weapons, present in your body but unable to fight effectively. At the same time, certain foods create an internal chemical environment that either promotes or suppresses inflammation. Foods high in refined sugar, for example, cause rapid spikes in blood glucose and insulin, which trigger inflammatory cascades that directly suppress immune cell activity and create the kind of metabolic environment where cancer cells thrive. Processed foods high in trans fats and artificial additives do similar damage at the cellular level. This is not speculation. These are mechanisms that have been identified, studied, replicated, and published in peer-reviewed journals for decades. And they apply with even greater force after age 60, when the body's resilience and ability to compensate for nutritional deficiencies is significantly reduced. Let me tell you about a 64-year-old woman named Dorothy from Tennessee. Dorothy had watched her mother and her older sister both be diagnosed with breast cancer in their 60s, and she was understandably frightened about her own future. She went to her oncologist and asked what she could do beyond regular screenings, and what her doctor told her shifted the entire direction of her health choices. Her doctor explained that while genetics play a role in cancer risk, they are not destiny, and that the research on diet and immune function in older women was now strong enough to recommend specific dietary changes as a meaningful form of cancer prevention. Dorothy was not told to go on a complicated diet. She was not handed a list of supplements. She was told to focus on 5 specific categories of food, to eat them consistently and generously, and to reduce her intake of the inflammatory foods that were undermining her immune system every day. 3 years later, Dorothy's inflammatory markers, measured through a simple blood test, had dropped significantly. Her oncologist described her internal biological age as years younger than her chronological age, and Dorothy herself felt a difference in her energy, her clarity, and her sense of control over her own health. Now let us get into the first food, and I want you to really pay attention here, because this one surprises most people with how powerful it actually is. The first food is cruciferous vegetables, and this category includes broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and kale. These vegetables contain a compound called sulforaphane, which is one of the most studied and most potent natural anti-cancer compounds ever identified in food. Sulforaphane works through multiple mechanisms simultaneously. It activates a protein called NRF2, which is essentially a master switch in your cells that turns on the production of your body's own antioxidant and detoxification enzymes. It inhibits the activity of cancer-promoting enzymes. It induces a process called apoptosis in abnormal cells, which is essentially programmed cell death. The mechanism your body uses to eliminate cells that have become dangerous before they can multiply into tumors. And it has been shown in multiple studies to reduce chronic inflammation by suppressing the activity of NF-kappa B, one of the most important inflammatory signaling pathways in the human body. Research published through the National Cancer Institute has found that people who eat cruciferous vegetables at least 4 times per week have a measurably lower risk of colorectal cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, and lung cancer compared to those who rarely eat them. For adults over 60, whose natural detoxification pathways are less efficient and whose inflammation levels tend to be higher, the protective effect of sulforaphane is even more pronounced. The key to getting the most out of these vegetables is in how you prepare them. Raw or lightly steamed is far superior to boiling, which destroys the enzyme myrosinase that is needed to convert the precursor compounds in the vegetable into active sulforaphane. A simple rule is to chew them well or steam them lightly, and eat them at least 3 to 4 times per week. The second food is something that has been eaten for thousands of years and is now being confirmed by modern science as one of the most powerful immune-modulating foods on the planet. And that food is garlic. Garlic contains a compound called allicin, which is released when garlic is crushed or chopped and allowed to rest for about 10 minutes before cooking. And allicin has been shown in numerous studies to have both direct anti-cancer properties and significant immune-enhancing effects. But allicin is just the beginning of what garlic does. Garlic also contains organosulfur compounds that stimulate the activity of natural killer cells, the immune cells specifically responsible for identifying and destroying cancer cells. A landmark study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that aged garlic extract significantly increased natural killer cell activity in older adults. And other research has shown that populations who consume garlic regularly have lower rates of stomach cancer and colorectal cancer than those who do not. For adults over 60 whose natural killer cell function has declined through immunosenescence, this is a particularly meaningful benefit. The practical recommendation from researchers is to eat 2 to 3 cloves of fresh garlic per day, either raw in salad dressings, added to soups, or cooked lightly into vegetables. The critical step that most people skip is the 10-minute rest after chopping or crushing, because that waiting period allows the enzymatic conversion of allicin into allicin to complete, and skipping it significantly reduces the medicinal potency of the garlic. Now, here is the third food, and this is one that I want you to think about carefully, because it represents an entire category of protective compounds that most Americans over 60 are severely deficient in. And that food category is deeply colored berries, specifically blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, and pomegranate. These fruits are extraordinarily rich in a class of compounds called anthocyanins and ellagic acid, which are among the most powerful naturally occurring antioxidants ever studied in the context of cancer prevention. Anthocyanins work by neutralizing free radicals, which are unstable molecules produced by normal metabolism, by inflammation, by environmental toxins, and by the cellular damage that accumulates with age. Free radicals cause oxidative stress, which is one of the primary drivers of DNA damage, and DNA damage is the first step in the mutation process that leads to cancer. When your body has abundant antioxidants from foods like berries, the rate of oxidative DNA damage decreases, the immune system has less cellular debris to deal with, and the overall cancer risk environment in your body improves measurably. Research from multiple universities, published and indexed through the NIH, has shown that blueberries in particular have the ability to inhibit the growth of cancer cell lines, including colon cancer, breast cancer, and leukemia cells in laboratory settings. And epidemiological studies have found consistent associations between high berry consumption and reduced cancer risk in older adults. 1 cup of mixed berries per day is a practical and achievable target, and frozen berries are just as nutritionally potent as fresh ones, which makes them affordable and accessible year-round for seniors on a budget. Let me introduce you to another person whose story matters here. His name was Gerald, a 68-year-old retired engineer from Michigan who came to his doctor after a routine colonoscopy found some precancerous polyps. His gastroenterologist removed the polyps and told Gerald that without significant lifestyle changes, the likelihood of new polyps developing was high and that the risk of eventual colorectal cancer was real. Gerald had always been someone who dismissed dietary advice as soft medicine. He preferred hard data. So his doctor handed him a stack of peer-reviewed studies. Gerald read every one of them over the following week, and what he found changed his mind completely. The data on cruciferous vegetables, berries, and the fourth food we are about to discuss was not based on small or poorly designed studies. It was based on large, well-controlled research involving tens of thousands of participants, replicated across multiple countries and cultures. Gerald changed his diet. He was not perfect about it, and he did not need to be. But at his follow-up colonoscopy 2 years later, his gastroenterologist found no new polyps, and the internal environment of his colon had measurably improved. Gerald still brings printed studies to his doctor appointments, but now he brings them to share, not to challenge. The fourth food is green tea, and I want to take a moment here to explain why this is not just a trendy wellness drink, but a genuinely powerful and well-researched immune-supporting compound. Green tea contains a class of polyphenols called catechins, and the most studied of these is epigallocatechin gallate, which researchers refer to as EGCG. EGCG has been shown in both laboratory and human studies to inhibit the proliferation of cancer cells, induce apoptosis in tumor cells, prevent the formation of new blood vessels that tumors use to grow, and reduce chronic inflammation through multiple molecular pathways. The research on EGCG and cancer is among the most extensive in all of nutritional science, and the findings across studies involving populations in Japan, China, and increasingly in the United States are remarkably consistent. People who drink green tea regularly, defined as 2 to 3 cups per day in most studies, have statistically lower rates of several cancers, including esophageal cancer, stomach cancer, pancreatic cancer, and certain types of breast and prostate cancer. For adults over 60, the anti-inflammatory effects of EGCG are particularly valuable because they directly counteract the inflammaging process that drives immune decline. The practical recommendation is 2 to 3 cups of green tea per day, brewed from loose leaves or quality tea bags, allowed to steep for 3 to 5 minutes in water that is hot but not boiling, because boiling water degrades the catechin content. Adding a small squeeze of lemon increases the bioavailability of the catechins significantly, and drinking green tea between meals rather than with meals ensures that the tannins in the tea do not interfere with iron absorption from food. The fifth food is perhaps the most underappreciated of all 5 on this list, and it is one that cancer researchers are becoming increasingly excited about as new evidence continues to emerge. That food is fermented foods, specifically yogurt with live active cultures, kefir, sauerkraut, and kimchi. The reason fermented foods matter so profoundly for cancer prevention in older adults comes down to the gut microbiome, which is the vast and complex community of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that live in your digestive tract and perform an astonishing range of functions that extend far beyond digestion. Your gut microbiome is now understood to be one of the most important regulators of your immune system, with approximately 70% of your immune cells located in the gut-associated lymphoid tissue that surrounds your intestines. When your microbiome is diverse, balanced, and populated with beneficial bacteria, it trains and supports your immune cells, regulates inflammation, produces short-chain fatty acids that protect the lining of the colon and suppress cancer cell growth, and communicates with the immune system in ways that enhance the body's ability to identify and eliminate abnormal cells. But after age 60, the microbiome tends to become less diverse, less balanced, and more dominated by opportunistic bacteria that promote inflammation rather than suppress it. A growing body of research published through the NIH and Harvard Medical School is showing that regular consumption of fermented foods significantly improves microbiome diversity in older adults, and that this improvement translates directly into measurable improvements in immune function and reductions in inflammatory markers. One serving of plain yogurt with live active cultures daily, or half a cup of sauerkraut or kimchi with meals several times per week, is enough to begin shifting the microbiome in a protective direction, and the benefits compound over time the more consistently these foods are included. Now, I want to tie all of this together in a way that makes clear why these 5 foods work best not as isolated choices, but as part of a consistent daily pattern, because this is where the research gets truly compelling. When researchers have looked at populations that eat all of these foods regularly together, the effects on cancer risk are not simply additive, they appear to be synergistic. The sulforaphane from broccoli activates detoxification pathways that clear the way for the antioxidants from berries to work more effectively. The anti-inflammatory effects of garlic and green tea reduce the inflammatory load that would otherwise blunt the immune-stimulating activity of the beneficial bacteria from fermented foods. The microbiome improvements from fermented foods enhance the absorption and bioavailability of the cancer-protective compounds in all of the other foods. These 5 categories of food are not 5 separate tools. They are 5 interconnected parts of a single protective system. And for adults over 60, building a daily dietary pattern that includes all 5 is one of the most powerful things you can do to reduce your cancer risk in a measurable, meaningful, and sustainable way. There is one more thing I want to address before we close, and it is something that comes up in nearly every conversation about cancer prevention, which is the role of what you are not eating. Because here is the truth that is sometimes uncomfortable to say directly. It does not matter how much broccoli and blueberries and green tea you consume if you are simultaneously eating a diet high in ultra-processed foods, refined sugars, red and processed meats, and artificial additives, because those foods create levels of inflammation and metabolic disruption that overwhelm the protective capacity of even the best cancer-fighting foods. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has published clear data showing that dietary patterns high in processed foods are associated with significantly elevated cancer risk, and the mechanism is well understood. It is inflammation, oxidative stress, microbiome disruption, and insulin dysregulation, all of which directly undermine immune function and create the cellular environment where cancer thrives. So the goal is not just to add the 5 protective foods. The goal is to add them while gradually and consistently reducing the foods that are working against your immune system every day. If you want to explore the research behind everything discussed in this video, here are 3 trusted and authoritative sources that I encourage you to visit. The National Institutes of Health at nih.gov has an enormous and freely accessible library of peer-reviewed research on diet, immunity, and cancer prevention in older adults. The American Cancer Society at cancer.org has specific and detailed guidelines on diet and cancer prevention that are updated regularly based on current evidence. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention at cdc.gov has published comprehensive data on cancer incidence by age group and lifestyle factors, along with practical prevention guidelines for older Americans. These resources are not opinion. They are evidence, and they are available to you right now. So here's what I want you to do today. Not next week, not after your next doctor's appointment. Today, go to your kitchen and look at what is in your refrigerator and your pantry. Ask yourself honestly whether the foods in there are working for your immune system or against it. Start with one change, just one. Add a cup of blueberries to your breakfast. Steam some broccoli with your dinner. Brew a cup of green tea in the afternoon instead of reaching for a sugary drink. Chop 2 cloves of garlic and let them rest before adding them to whatever you are cooking tonight. Pick up a container of plain yogurt with live active cultures the next time you're at the grocery store. Each of these steps is small. Each of them is affordable. And each of them, done consistently over days and weeks and months, adds up to a biological environment inside your body that is measurably more resistant to cancer than the one you have right now. Share this video with someone you love who is over 60, because this is the kind of information that deserves to be heard by everyone who needs it. Leave a comment and tell me which of these 5 foods you are going to start with today, because your commitment might be the thing that inspires someone else watching to finally make the change that protects their health. You are not powerless against cancer. You are more powerful than you think, and it starts with what you put on your plate.